Hey! This is part 2 of a full series recap of Silent Hill Ascension. If you haven't seen up until episode 25 of the show, this isn't gonna make any sense. It won't if you have, but it's still at least good to get some prep work in. Luckily, I've already covered the whole saga, so you're free to go back and rewatch that to get yourself up to speed. As for the here and now, oh god, we're back again. Alright, so a brief recap on what Silent Hill Ascension is, and how it's gone. Shit and fucking shit. But here's the plot. The game takes place in Silent Hill. Pranked. So the game doesn't take place in the town it's named after, which has always been firmly situated in Maine. Now, games have obviously taken place outside of the town itself, while still keeping its horror elements. Most famously, Silent Hill 4, taking place in Ashfield, which is still in Maine, but about 100 miles away from Silent Hill itself. So it's not unrealistic for a game to be set out of Silent Hill, but Ascension sets its story in Pennsylvania, which is a fair bit further away. Did I say story? I meant half the story. Because the other half is in Norway! Silent Hill's gotten into the water, it's all over. In Pennsylvania, there's a cult called the Foundation. Are they like the Order from Silent Hill? And Silent Hill 3? And Silent Hill 4? And Silent Hill Origins? And Silent Hill Homecoming? They submitted an application to be a part of it, but it must have gotten lost in the mail. They haven't gotten back to us yet. They do all the cool stuff you'd join a cult to do, like have arguments and kill Toby's sister. Toby has voiced displeasure with that, his phone calls are ignored. After doing an oopsie poopsie with her neck, cult bigwig Rachel feels a twinge of guilt and smacks around her husband Eric to feel better. Cry for Eric and see your tears wasted. He is a spineless coward. The cult reports a withering is afoot. Oh, right, so a withering is when it's orange and this guy is around. They scramble to find out how to stop it. Rachel suggests an idea. Krista throws her in the dirt where she belongs. Rachel gets slapped by her own kid, Toby levels up to Archmage with a fireball spell, and they accept Toby into the cult. First order of business is to fill the role of Toby's sister and get killed. Toby dies, and with it my interest in this show. Imagine a few scenes of monsters poking their heads in and waving, "How do you do?" And it's about as accurate a summary as you could hope for. Meanwhile, in Norway, a stage play of Silent Hill 2 goes horribly wrong, as a Silent Hill 2 breaks out, when Carl Johansson and his little sidekick beat the shit out of his wife until she dies. His daughter Astrid suspects foul play, and more importantly, the cops do too. Until they just kinda give up on trying to find out who did it. They seriously stop the investigation and presume the pillow fell on her face and she just couldn't get it off. Astrid shows morphine pills to anybody who will spare the time and accomplishes nothing. This is an important theme to keep an eye out for. It's a real family affair with the Johanssons, which Carl misinterpreted as "f*** your dead wife's sister." Astrid's sister Britt also arrives, and now she is there too. The family is currently planning a big old combination jamboree / funeral when we last left them. All caught up to the present? Good, because now it's time to see how it all wraps up. Fans of the past might remember that recounting how this story even works was a Herculean task when it was only 25 episodes, and now we're up to 70. So here's the plan. We are going to cover this thing in very broad strokes, starting with one story and sticking with it until it's finished. Then we'll cover the other one. This retelling is going to make the story seem somewhat cohesive. So if you want the real experience of watching Silent Hill Ascension, just swing back and forth to random parts as we summarize each story, and you'll get how disorienting it is to have your story told in 3-minute increments, broken up by fades to black. To make up for my preferential treatment last time, we're going to start with the Norway section, since I think the Pennsylvania story is the show at its worst, and therefore is a lot more interesting to talk about. So, as promised, we're at Ingrid's funeral, with a whole cavalcade of people we've never seen before, and will never see again, named Jizzblaster Dan and Pyramid Head's ring. Only close family friends. Which the Johanssons have none of. These are all paid actors.
Because life with her was an unrelenting nightmare. I know that's probably not what you came to hear, but it's the truth. And I'm tired of covering up for her behavior with lies and smiles. That's not what life was like here. She was a monster.
The lady who organized the funeral didn't have anything nice to say. The rest of these guys are just waiting to slap the corpse around a bit. Astrid scolds Orson and Carl for making a scene, but she can't fix it because she needs to take care of the guests. She has to hold them back from driving a stake through her heart and putting garlic around her neck to make sure she doesn't get back up. All three of them. And then the man who raised two other children tells this clearly mentally unstable child to sit down and shut up, with all the love and affection that a hammer has for a nail. It's no wonder then that Carl and Orson disappear a few seconds after Astrid takes her eyes off of them. After running into the forest to try and find out where they went, Carl is accounted for, but somehow Orson gave him the slip. While he runs into the woods to try to find Orson, Astrid turns to her other parent for support, because Ingrid's ghost is here to give the assist. This scene is really good because the forest is full of wavy tree branches that look like they're melting because of the motion blur. Astrid chooses to trust her scary demon mom who she hates, and she leads her directly to Carl, who no one is ever looking for. He desperately tries to get Astrid to abandon Orson in the woods, only for the pair to be jumped by a giant flying demon.
Orson! Papa, let go of me! Orson! Orson!
Oh, my bad, I didn't recognize him. It is pretty cold out right now. The pair get dragged back to civilization by Britt, who sets the record straight. Orson is missing, the police are trying to find him, and Astrid and Carl have been missing in the woods for 3 days. Now that the big happy family's back together, Astrid calls Britt an unreliable drug addict, and Britt calls Astrid a horrible mother who lost her child. Head Detective Haugen, who spearheaded the Ingrid murder investigation and had dick-ass shit butt to show for it, then confides in Carl that they're not trying to find Orson, they're trying to find what's left of Orson. Telling that to Astrid, though, would be kind of awkward, so Haugen hoists the responsibility onto Carl and tells him to tell Astrid that her little boy is probably dead. Astrid's over the moon, and over this shit, as she goes back out into the woods looking for whatever she can. Super duper happy they keep using Silent Hill music as ringtones. It's a real Pavlovian dog response. If the follow-up for the dog was getting hit in the head with a newspaper. Astrid then gets a call from Britt saying she found Orson. But Orson's also in the woods with Astrid, which means there's at minimum 2 ghost Orsons running around. She goes to the ice hotel and, surprise, there's no Orson, and Britt has no idea what the hell anybody is talking about. Astrid showing up to a location full of people and screaming, "I would never hurt my baby boy!" was such a reliable thing to do that the police have named her as the #1 suspect in the murder of Orson, especially after a blood-stained glove was found on the tire to her car. That's especially suspect because there is not a single scene of somebody driving a car in this show. In perhaps the most despicable act in the entire show so far, Carl calls orderlies to his house and has his daughter institutionalized, because he believes with all his heart that Astrid killed the kid that he lost. Haugen's happy as a clam that the Johanssons might have started to kill each other, but Astrid wins the world record for quickest release from police custody after being the main suspect in a child murder case, and is palling around with Britt in the ice bar. Britt is a recovering alcoholic, by the way, so really bang up work by Astrid picking a good meeting spot, you asshole. Britt is just so kind and understanding, trying to be nice to Astrid and help her through the most difficult time in her life. And it's only gonna get worse because a true crime podcaster is coming to town. If I could make stuff this stupid up, I would be charging you to hear it. So rest assured that this is very, very real. Astrid, in the throes of being a complete moron, accuses Britt of selling her family secrets to a podcasting douchebag and trying to get her arrested. And Britt completely goddamn justified at this point, leaves. Alright, just so we all know the score going in, Astrid will never talk to Carl again because he had her institutionalized, Britt will never talk to Astrid again because she accused her of having a podcast, and Carl will never talk to Britt again because he wants to feel like a big boy too. The family does get back together and talks things out just to make sure there are no long-lasting consequences for our characters' actions, as Carl agrees to come to Britt's AA meetings to deal with the fact that he is completely goddamn nuts. You don't want to know how many Carl hallucination scenes we've skipped.
My name is Britt, and I'm an addict.
Hello, Britt. Nice to see you came back. Seems like you're becoming a regular.
What a horrible thing to say to somebody going to rehab! Oh, you're back again, you piece of shit! I thought coming back was the point! What the hell do you want me to do? Fuck you! It goes about as well as you'd expect, given all Carl has to do is talk to other people.
Papa?
One of those creatures is loose in the hospital. We have to hide. It's out there. Nobody leave this room.
I can't believe you.
Oh my god, my dad is so embarrassing! He sees demons in the streets and thinks the mailman is spying on us. Not like Astrid's having a much better time, since she's swamped with dead bodies at the hospital, and they're only increasing, as patients keep dying mysteriously. Wait. Has anybody seen Carl? Eventually, the doubt settles in for Astrid about her own mental state, and she turns herself into the cops as a suspect in Orson's disappearance. And then, I don't know why this is happening, and then Astrid starts resisting the arrest that she turned herself in for. Like she didn't realize saying, "I killed my son," would lead to her getting put in handcuffs. Right before she's taken in, though, a withering hits, and transports her to a whole new location. And who's there but Rachel from the Pennsylvania storyline? You would think it'd be worth covering the moment that these two storylines converged for the first time. Would you believe me if I told you these scenes barely ever mattered? I can't believe it, but really, these scenes, the 4 or 5 times they cross over, all worthless. They never learn anything. They never advance the plot. Oh, the show is terrified of advancing the plot, but these sections are the worst for it. This show is so slow to make any meaningful changes, and the ones it teases, like characters becoming distant or hating each other, are undone all the time just as soon as they're introduced. The first time Astrid threatens to never talk to Carl again, I was hooked. And then they made up. And then Astrid said it again. And then they made up. Carl can literally have her dragged away in a straitjacket and they still make amends. The entire show is like this, where something interesting gets teased, only for it to get compromised for the sake of some weird status quo. For a show all about audience participation, I can't feel a single moment where the plot really changed without correcting right back to the way it used to be. What this all has to do with the crossover sections is because these are the sections that should radically change something. These should be like markers where a big change happens and then the two plotlines convene. But no, these sections don't do anything. They don't advance the story, they don't reveal anything new, they don't tell us anything we don't already know because nobody says anything interesting. They show up, talk about nothing, and leave. This is supposed to be the most interesting part, the whole reason that there are 2 plot lines happening at the same time. But nothing. After Astrid gets a funny little pen pal, she manages to somehow get out of any trouble and actually get Haugen into more trouble. She's been taken off of the Orson case because she can't be impartial. And now Astrid's been cleared of the crime she just admitted to. Also, the Withering, or wherever the heck they go to, is really confusing because she gets sucked in at the hospital, but gets spat back out at the police station. Was she just zoning out in a Silent Hill-themed limbo as they dragged her by her boots to the police station? Still haven't actually said Silent Hill, by the way, in the entire show. Meanwhile, while Astrid escapes a murder charge, Carl charges headlong into one because meta. Right, you probably don't know who that is. Meta is the sister of Ingrid, who Carl is now doing the dirty with because it's the closest he can get to his abusive wife. Meta and Carl find a fucking mass grave filled with the patients who have died at the hospital recently, all with their medical bands as grave markers. Then Meta starts getting real creepy, talking about how they lived without hope, and they needed somebody to help them escape, and oh my god, she's a mass murderer, isn't she? Meta innocently suggests skipping town, abandoning their family, and burning their prints off on the stove. You know, it's like a fun themed vacation idea. Carl, never meeting a stern tone of voice he didn't want to submit to, considers it. Then a crazy scene happens in the ice bar, which really brings a lot of Norway's issues to a head. So Detective Haugen is drinking her troubles away when Astrid comes by to try to find out what the deal is and why she isn't a suspect anymore. Haugen and Astrid then play a really fun game where they cut off each other's sentences before any information can come out. They are inches away from revealing any sort of interesting information, but they keep stopping short with the audience in a way that is so frustrating. But then, as they're shouting at each other, Britt comes in, and suddenly the barkeep is screaming at her to stay out after she smashed up the bar a few days ago and isn't allowed in. Huh? When the hell did this happen? We never saw this. The old phrase, tell, don't show, gets a lot of play in Silent Hill Ascension, but Britt specifically is where it's at its absolute worst. Tons of scenes with Britt boil down to something happening off-screen that Britt and the audience both have no knowledge of. People shout at her, and then she leaves. This is a very frustrating way to build up a scene, since it comes out of nowhere and always ends the same. If it were any other character to do it, it would be one thing. But Britt is uniquely the worst possible choice for this sort of setup. See, as a recovering addict, Britt is put under suspicion because what if she relapses, smashes stuff up, and then just forgets? Then she has an out for not remembering it while still being guilty. Well, see, there's a problem with that, and it's how the damn game works. The players were given choice after choice, trying to get Britt to relapse and either take drugs or drink. It's never exactly stated whether she has an addiction to one, the other, or both. She just has addiction. A general addiction to being addicted. Every single time that choice was presented, though, the audience picked no. No, we do not want to see Britt relapse. We want her to get better and for her to kick her bad habits. It's one of the very few times the majority opinion was actually weighted towards helping a character who really deserved it. So if these scenes are meant to be her relapsing off-screen without us being able to influence it, then what the hell is the point of any of this? It makes the choice of the community feel worthless as we get railroaded down a path we explicitly don't want. But the story needs Britt to be untrustworthy and erratic, because if she isn't, then Britt pretty much has nothing to do. She doesn't do anything that Astrid and Haugen don't already do. She doesn't play into the major themes of the section better than any other characters do. She doesn't interact with anybody any differently than Astrid does. She is the most removable character in the entire storyline, and I'm including the ones who die. Just trying to find Britt scenes. Not scenes where she's a main character or doing something important. I'm just talking about scenes where Britt is even present. It's hard. She vanishes for long stretches of the story, and then just shows back up. I like Britt as a character. I think she's one of the better ones, but as I was trying to think about what Britt really contributes to the wider story, the most she does is make problems with her random blackouts. And the whole thing would be a lot more bearable if she wasn't even there at all. Speaking of useless wastes of space, welcome back to the stage, Carl Johansson. Carl has actually been giving thought to abandoning his daughters in Orson, which says more than I ever could, when Meta basically screams in his ear that she has been factory farming Marys from Silent Hill 2 to euthanize.
This looks very bad, Meta.
I know what it looks like, and I'm telling you, I helped those people, Carl.
I know you think you did.
I did, Carl. They were in so much pain. They had no hope left.
But does that give you the right to kill them? no matter how merciful you thought you were being.
You have to believe me.
What I believe makes no difference. The police are going to come after us one way or another.
I was careful. The police will never figure it out. And even if they do, we will be long gone by then.
Meta is not a character. Meta is, at best, a pile of pillows for Carl to practice kissing on. She has no personality, story, or effect on the narrative for the several episodes she's been kicking around. So to give her a storyline, they took the inciting incident from Silent Hill 2 and turbocharged it, like if James was going full Dynasty Warriors through an army of Marys. This summary does not get across how many people Meta killed. This game scavenges the bones of Silent Hill 2 like a vulture. And a key theme every time they do take something is a complete disregard for whatever it meant. When James kills Mary, spoilers, by the way, if the Dynasty Warriors analog wasn't vivid enough. When James kills Mary, it's after a years-long internal struggle in the mind of somebody who didn't realize how far gone he was until he already went over the edge. The remorse that is soaked into him after he kills Mary is enough to show the most important part of James's character. He doesn't know if he did the right thing or not. If it was mercy, he wouldn't feel bad about it because he did the right thing. If it was a murder, he would just be crazy and not feel anything for that reason. James is so interesting a character because it is up for debate on whether or not he did the right thing. The topic of euthanasia, especially in a case like Mary's, is very delicate. And Silent Hill 2 handles it so well because it does show both sides. James did what he did out of a sense of love for Mary. He didn't want her to suffer any more than she had to. But he's still a murderer. He killed her. Meta, meanwhile, has nothing resembling the guilt or remorse that James had. And it turns her into a psycho killer, just smothering people for the hell of it. The topic of if she's doing the right thing or not isn't even considered because the game already assumes you know that she's screwed in the head. She isn't even killing people who have lost all hope like Mary. These are people who were getting better, that she just chose to kill because she deemed them to have lost hope. And Carl is considering! Even after dropping a piece of evidence in the town's mass murder case on his table, I'd be real worried if it wasn't Hulk Hogan on the case, he doesn't throw her out in the cold. He is still willing to hear her out. Makes sense. Last wife got murdered. New wife murders. It's an upgrade. So, while Carl actually considers skipping town with Jason Voorhees to sip fruity drinks in Acapulco, the only thing worse than a murderer enters the story. A podcaster! As a white boy, I have to fight back the demons every day to keep me from fulfilling my blood right and starting a podcast. And I think you all need to be a bit more appreciative that I've done so good. This is Nils, and it's never addressed in show, but I found out on the Silent Hill wiki that they're actually supposed to be non-binary. I will be using the appropriate pronouns so that my hate for this character is genuine. Nils runs a true crime podcast and is looking to get Astrid on as a guest to talk about how her son is dead, or worse, alive and lost in the woods. If they're gonna do the podcast anyway, they just want Astrid on as a guest to make fun of her. And that was the moment I knew my son was dead. Today's episode was sponsored by Gamer Sups. Try the new flavor Titty Milk in the Waifu Cup. I can't stress enough these are actual products you're supposed to buy. You think I'm joking? Next time they meet, Dr. Podcast just sort of shoves a phone in her face and asks, "Did it feel good when you killed that baby with your bare hands?" What? I didn't murder my child. Oh, didn't you? I'd murder my child. Oh my god, why would I say that? But why did she even accept to do the podcast in the first place? Well, Dr. Podcast played the smooth card, and guilt-tripped Astrid with the fact that they were a victim in a mass shooting to get her to go on their podcast! I was in a mass shooting. You're gonna read the MeUndies ad! It's kinda hard to describe how lame and pathetic this scene is. Dr. Podcast just gets an out-of-context voice line of Astrid, saying some really mundane stuff about how she wishes the mass shooting never happened, and then they gloat like this is gonna ruin her life. And then they leave without taking the phone. I triple-checked this. They seriously leave the room without picking the phone back up. This might be why this plot point never comes back up in any way, and this scene is ultimately meaningless. We finally get to see Carl make his decision, and the audience really played Carl out of character here, and made him not go with the horrible murder lady who talked to him a little nicely. Doesn't matter since Meta gets skinned alive 2 seconds later and is out of the story, and with it goes any discussion about the graveyard she hand dug. I really don't think it comes across in a format like this that this plot point was built up for hours and exited the story and any relevance in mere seconds. The story is so starved for interest and intrigue that as soon as the meta plotline began, it doesn't matter if it's stupid or doesn't work, you just want to stick around so people have something to do. In its place is a new storyline where Haugen seeks out Astrid to help her find her own missing daughter, who has been dead for 15 years and was killed in the mass shooting that got Dr. Podcast. Oh boy, why was she discharged from the police? While they're talking turkey, Carl goes home and gets smacked in the face so hard with a metaphor, it leaves a bruise. As when he goes home, he sees a monster up in his bedroom, the same one that he saw with his wife when she was killed. And when he goes up there, all that's in the room is himself. Oh my god. There are 2 Carls. Luckily, Carl's not out of the limelight yet, since his funny little sidekick Ava is planning on going to the memorial for the mass shooting and doing a mass shooting. This time only of monsters though, which will clearly go well. She asks Carl if he wants to go, and Carl says yes. Carl mans up by getting drunk before bringing a gun to a public space and talks to the barkeep about the time a mother bear nearly killed him. If you think this is a metaphor about motherhood or something, no, this is a very literal story about a grizzly bear attack. So Carl goes to shoot a bunch of people, but I don't know, something doesn't seem right.
I already told you, Papa. I don't need to be protected. People need to be protected from me.
Carl gets shot immediately before anything can happen, and suddenly all pretense and metaphor is thrown away as we get the real story. Ava? That's not a random kid, that's his daughter. Astrid and Britt had a sister named Ava. Had a sister. She died 15 years ago because she's the one who committed the mass shooting. That's why the Johansons have such a bad reputation, because Ava killed a lot of people out of retaliation for what she went through at home. She's only been in Carl's head. That's why nobody has ever acknowledged Ava was there, even in scenes where other characters were present. Carl suffered a psychotic break and sees his daughter as a way of coping, and in his madness, he brought a gun as a way to protect her, and it cost him everything. I don't give Silent Hill Ascension credit. Period. But there's a first for everything, and everything about the Ava plotline actually worked. It plays on the same ideas that Silent Hill has always been about, which is repressing dark events with better ones, figures replacing loved ones, and living with guilt. Ava's reveal recontextualizes a lot of scenes too. Like when she's sitting with Orson and talking about her parents, it's actually Ava talking about Carl and Ingrid, and it shows Carl has always been an intensely emotional guy, with his mother's death leaving him inconsolable for a week. It makes perfect sense for Carl to internalize his grief this way, and the execution was really well done. With Carl being shot and dying there too, it wraps up his story in a nice little bow. Except, no it doesn't. That's not how Carl's story ends. Because Carl doesn't die here. Carl is left to rot in the streets until he stands up and walks off the bullet wound. The barkeep comes around with a boat, tells him it has enough gas to get him to Bergen. Carl gets in the boat, and Carl leaves. If you can still stomach looking at Carl after this, props to you, but this scene breaks Carl as a character. He already sucks big time before this, but the fact that he is running away from his family as they presume he died in a moment where they need him more than ever shows that Carl is a spineless coward that we all knew he was. He starts the game as a browbeaten husband who's well-meaning but meek, and ends the story as the guy who institutionalized one daughter, has barely said a word to the other, covered up the murders of dozens of people, and fled when the people that he loved needed him the most. His story is not about a father overcoming his crippling fears and finally standing up for the daughters he claims to love. It's about a gutless snake showing his true colors, which are all yellow. Abandoning his family like this is enough for me to say that Carl is easily the most hateable character in the Norway portion. There is nothing to like about this guy. If losers get you going, just hold out for more Eric scenes. So Carl leaves, but doesn't have the courtesy to die on the way out. This leaves Astrid and Britt in kind of a rough spot. They don't just lose their parents, they kind of lose anything to do. I mean, yeah, they're still keeping an eye out on Orson, but not like that's getting them anywhere. They decide to burn their old family stuff and get rid of the past, and resolve to move away and start again. But just when they're about to burn Orson's stuff, Astrid reneges. She says she can't do it because... Oh, hey Orson, how's it going? Orson strolls back into the story, just as casual as you like. Astrid is overjoyed to have her baby back. Until Britt suggests getting this child to a doctor since he's been in freezing cold temperatures for days. Or weeks. Or months, it's really hard to tell. Astrid goes full anti-vaxxer and says no doctor knows how to treat her son. Not unlike her, the woman who confessed to murdering him. She immediately backs down and takes him to get examined.
He needs to be sedated, for your safety as well as his. Drug the little bastard so he can't muck it all up.
Hey now, why you gotta say something like that? You got a point, you know what? Drug the little bastard. Detective Haugen swings by to say, how do you do? And since Orson's back, she decides that she can bring up a funny story from her time on the investigation, in how she was sabotaging the case the entire time to make sure that Astrid couldn't find Orson, as a form of payback for losing her child to Ava's rampage. Astrid tells her to never talk to her again, which means they'll be making out by the end of the story. Britt, meanwhile, is being tempted to drink again by Ghost Mom and the world's worst sponsor. But, like I said, every time this option comes up, the audience says, no thank you. Which makes the worst scene in the show all the harder to swallow. I don't say that lightly, and maybe when we cover Pennsylvania and all the wacky hijinks of the Toby Memorial Club, I'll change my tune. But this is at least the worst scene in Norway. So, Britt's going to her Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, but gets stopped at the door because of what she did to Jonas. Who is Jonas? She did something really bad. She told Jonas to start drinking again, and then he did, and then he overdosed, and then he called this lady to say he overdosed, and then he died. Wait, who's Jonas? In memory of Jonas, they ban Britt from the AA meetings and kick her out. She suppresses a demon burp and leaves. Who the hell is Jonas? We've never met a Jonas. Britt's never met a Jonas. You're blaming me for the death of people who don't even exist. Fisher Tiger died too. You want to try pinning that one on me? Fuck you. This scene is nothing. Just nothing. Oh, but it gets better, because the guy standing near the door comes up to her in the next scene and says she's allowed in anyway. What about Jonas? And then as the scene ends, the game introduces the possibility that there is an evil Brit living in the mirror dimension who makes the real Brit do bad things. As if it couldn't get worse, Astrid is now really into this legend called the Lady in the Woods, and wants Britt to get Nils because Nils might know something about it, because they have a podcast.
Then offer to give them an interview. Try to fuck them, I don't care. I just need help.
You want her to fuck a podcast? Dr. Podcasts takes Britt into the woods to look for a tree with a lady's face in it, because what else does Norway have? One of the happiest populations in the world. Oh, great place for Silent Hill. Wait. This town is called Stillendalen, which translated from Norwegian is... Oh, that's why everything's backwards. Like the quality. Anyway, Britt finds Mirror Britt, so this is how it's gonna be now, I guess. Is the climax gonna be Mirror Britt getting trapped in a podcast, or what? You think that's bad? Now Haugen is hypnotizing Orson to try to get more information out of him. Do you think I'm leaving out scenes? 'Cause I am. But none of them explain why this is happening. I did leave out this scene where Orson overpowers two adults, but it's pretty funny. While Astrid is in the Withering, don't waste the breath to ask why. Britt looks after Orson, who has just gotten a f***ing knife. With the strength of 10 men, Orson hospitalizes Britt and himself, and I don't think I've ever seen a more f***ed up bed situation than this. This is a ridiculous amount of pillows, but he's only resting on one of them. No blanket, still got your shoes on? Dude, this is horrible. Also, like none of this matters. I don't mean, like, cosmically. I mean everything that's happened for the past hour, none of it matters. We learned pretty much nothing new. Nothing's happened, and nothing that did happen is gonna impact the next scene. Orson and Britt are hospitalized. Orson tried to kill Britt with a knife. These should be more important than they are. Like, take the scene where Orson does get hypnotized, because they weren't joking about that. Orson starts describing all this imagery. He screams he's being burned. He bites his mother's throat. Next scene? Who gives a shit? Do you know how horrible a viewing experience that makes this? Do you know what it's like to have a show that is so terrified to introduce a new concept for fear it'll actually have to follow up on that concept in a way that makes sense or is interesting? That's why stuff like the podcast with Astrid, Carl's bear attack, the entire murder investigation of Ingrid or Orson, they all just stop cold turkey after 1 or 2 scenes, or meander on with no developments until an unsatisfying conclusion. A horror series is all about build-up and payoff, but in this show, the pacing seems more concerned with the 3-minute segments they get rather than the overall 10-hour show they're a part of. A scene ends with a character saying a spooky thing, but the next scene doesn't even regard it. I'm not asking for much here, guys. I just want to follow the basic tenets of how a story works. One scene influences the next. Okay, kinda screwed myself here. This scene kinda doesn't work without knowledge of what's going on in the Pennsylvania section. So there's a counter cult working against the Foundation called the Heralds, and they want to spread the Withering instead of stopping it. The Heralds are made up of exactly 2 people, which is not a cult, it's a brunch, but whatever. One of the Heralds is in Pennsylvania, where there is any cult activity, and the other is in Norway. Save all questions until the end. It turns out that the Herald is actually Astrid's social worker, who's been manipulating Astrid from the start into making her think she was a horrible mother. She's the one who kidnapped Orson. She drugs and kidnaps Astrid and Haugen, and forces her to admit to Orson that Carl really did kill Ingrid. This is something that apparently everybody in the story already knows, but that we don't get to know until now because we are subhuman scum. Haugen spears her, she disappears, and then Astrid wakes up in the hospital. Okay, so here is the information as best I can summarize it. So, the social worker and her sister wanted to find families who had tragedies so they could exploit them to get more withering so that they could have more withering, you know, like in the back of the pantry. The Pennsylvania sister is in Pennsylvania, milking the Hernandezes for all they're worth, while the social worker sister came to Norway because she read about Ava's rampage in the paper and thought the Johansons would be a good family to milk. She then becomes a social worker to earn Astrid's trust so she can get close to her, so that she can then kidnap Orson from Carl, who is probably too busy fucking his dead wife's sister, and then make him spooky. She then released Spooky Orson back into the ecosystem so that he could be spooky, and then she showed back up. Are we all good? Let me rephrase that. Do we all understand? Let me rephrase that. Are we ready to move on? Good, because she vanishes into thin air after Haugen tackles her, and Orson goes with her. So Orson's missing again. Astrid? Chip this kid. What's Britt up to during this? It involves a podcast. Do you really want to know? Also, do you remember how Haugen said that Orson went missing? What she really meant was that she didn't check all the rooms in the house, because Orson's there, safe and sound, with a fucking gun. This kid's gonna have a tank by the end of the show. Now we got one of those classic Silent Hill misunderstandings on our hands, as Astrid and Haugen are going to go bargain with the social worker to get Orson back, but Britt already has Orson. Really makes the whole thing feel pointless, don't it? Especially Astrid's part, considering the fact that the social worker has zero leverage. Nils, like a dumb piece of shit, starts yelling at Orson about how his Aunt Ava was a monster, and how he's exactly like her, not yet realizing that podcasts aren't bulletproof. So Astrid eats a root filled with ink or whatever, and gets sent to a new spot in the Withering, where the social worker, her Pennsylvanian sister, and Rachel are there. Rachel lost an eye at some point. Imagine all the other fun stuff happening in Pennsylvania. So anyway, you want to talk about podcasts? Alright, so the social worker sisters are about to reveal their big plan. Try to keep up. Grab a notebook if you think it would help, because fans of proper nouns are about to go crazy. So the Heralds are trying to bring about the Withering by spreading blight. They're doing this to summon the great empath who will perform an Ascension, which will... You know what? I don't think it's very important to Silent Hill Ascension to find out what an Ascension is. Social worker wants to get the last bit of blight needed to summon the great empath, which Google Images tells me is this lady, and... I mean, yeah, she could do some damage. Anyway, she needs Astrid to help her commit monster-assisted suicide. Okay, so I've told you what happens, but I don't really feel like I explained much. That's because this is an accurate summary of Silent Hill Ascension, and I want you to have the same experience I did. It's not like any of this matters, really. Because after this scene, the monster starts to chase everybody, and then social worker sister from Pennsylvania gets killed. And so social worker sister from Norway leaves the story forever. So if one twin dies, it brings about the apocalypse. But if the other twin dies, nothing? Geez, talk about the short end of the stick. Oh, and I mean it. Social worker is gone. Forever. She never comes back. She never gets mentioned again. She just falls in a hole. Forgotten about to time and history. Not me, but what do I know? So all that stuff we just talked about, all that dumb stuff like Orson's kidnapping, Astrid's brainwashing, the Withering, the Blight, the Great Empath? Pointless. Didn't even matter. Like every other plot beat in this show, getting invested is a failure of the game design, and will lead to you regretting it every single time. I don't know how it feels for you guys, but I just feel like I'm talking in circles, because this show plays in circles. So Astrid makes it home and threatens to have another fight with Britt that will ruin their relationship for a few minutes. But at this point, even the monsters are getting bored. Oh yeah, there are monsters in this show! Now this time, the monsters are real, which would be really scary. Except a monster has not killed anybody since the first scene of episode 1. So the entire town gets held up in the ice hotel because what if Carl shows back up? And the Johanssons go there too for safety. Okay, so now the Johanssons and the town who hates the Johanssons are forced to be in the same place for potentially years. I'm just gonna let you imagine what the next entire episode is like and move on. Britt is warming up to Dr. Podcast, which is disappointing, as they go to try to find a boat to escape with Astrid, Orson, and Haugen. But when Britt arrives at the docks...
You're Britt Johansson, right?
Yeah? Why?
They told us you'd be down by the docks.
Look, I'm just here for a boat, okay?
There is no boat.
Get the fuck off of me!
Do you remember Anna Peterson? She was my best friend. And your sister Ava shot her in the stomach.
Please, I'm not my sister.
We should take her to Nils.
So I'm not saying Dr. Podcast is wrong for sending Britt to be gunned down out of vengeance for what her sister did. I just, Wait a sec. So now that the family got kicked out of the ice hotel because what the hell else was gonna happen? You'd be more upset if I showed you the glut of content that comes from this arc. Haugen and the barkeep stock up the Johansons with guns. Because a family driven to the brink of insanity and ostracized by an entire town is surely missing more guns. Let's give them a goodbye kiss for the road. Oh, these two had a romantic element. Certainly a surprise to me. The guy who watched the entire show. The gang all meets up back in town where Astrid and Britt have the least convincing argument possible. Astrid blames Britt for everything that's gone wrong. Like her other sister didn't commit a mass shooting. This earns her a dip in the withering, for whatever that's worth, except no, she's not alone. All the surviving Pennsylvania characters are there too, just to show how utterly pointless the rest of Norway is, save for Astrid and Orson. Wanna know the best part? I don't even have to spoil anything. Because Astrid doesn't do anything. She just stands politely until her and Orson are allowed to leave. They just pop up back in their house after not doing anything, and it's back to business as usual. The next scene is a Brit scene, and I just had a thought. Britt is a recovering addict. She's constantly fighting off urges to fall back off the wagon. So then why is the Johansson house loaded out the damn gills? Every single time Britt is given the chance to do the wrong thing, it's punctuated by giving her a chance to fall off the wagon. And while it's a neat idea in concept, it makes her family look horrible for not removing all the booze when she's going to be tempted all the time. This ends up with Britt getting trapped in the mirror dimension, and I'm not even lying. Evil Britt takes over good Britt's body and lures Astrid into the center of town to drown her. Only for her to get hit on the head, reveal she lured the people into the town square for Ava to kill in exchange for some drugs, goes to an AA meeting in heaven, and then leaves the story forever. So, there's something deeply gross about blaming stuff like alcoholism and drug abuse on an evil mirror world that you needed to help survive parental abuse. But implication aside, it's just a really dumb plot point. Really? There were two Brits running around? That's why she can't remember doing bad stuff? Why is Bad Brit even doing this? How is she protecting herself by smashing up a hotel? By convincing people to overdose? It's confusing as hell, and unlike the Ava reveal, recontextualizes nothing, since it doesn't make anything make more sense. We've upgraded Detective Haugen and the barkeep to main character status. That is where we're at right now. The town is frankly sick of being overrun with monsters and thinks killing a Johansson will make something better. So they attack the farm with guns to try to get Orson, who either went missing again or was found again recently. They get scared off by Haugen, who has a gun, versus them, with their many guns. Luckily though, they're dealt with humanely, by having them be eaten to death by dogs. Meanwhile, back inside, there's something even worse. The end of the story! Yeah, I know, it feels like things are happening kinda fast. Well, by Silent Hill Ascension standards, this last couple of episodes have been a rush job. I think you would genuinely be disgusted if you found out how much content I skipped that didn't have anything more to add. Like, we did skip quite a few scenes, but they don't help understand. I'm not hiding anything from you. I have given you all the important information. This is it. I can't make Silent Hill Ascension look worse than it already makes itself look. Ingrid's back, and with her comes the big revelation, Astrid's biggest sin. See, after Ava got back from the mass shooting, Ingrid and Astrid poisoned her tea with wolfsbane. Then they burned her body and... Wait, came home? As in, she made it back from the mass shooting safe and sound and just sat down? What? How the hell did that happen? You're telling me that she started firing into a crowd of people with a rifle using hollow point rounds that Carl had for something, and then she made it all the way back home, which we're led to believe is a huge distance away, and was fine? She didn't get gunned down or shot on the way back? Yeah, sorry, but this revelation's the dumbest one so far. How does it make any sense? This does lead to a kinda cool scene where Astrid digs up Ava's bones, which are just in the ground, no casket style, love to see it. And then Astrid stops the withering by shooting the monster with a cage on its head in the back. Listen, when you get horse apples to work with, you make a bad pie. I can't make it make more sense than what's given to me. I will say, crazy way to end a story spurred on by a mass shooting to have it all culminate in guns solving the problem. Inspired choice. The story ends with the whole gang, and presumably the only people left in Stillendalen still alive, Astrid, Orson, Britt, Haugen, and the barkeep, all having a nice family dinner, as it looks like the worst is behind us. Like all the people ripped apart by the very real demon dogs. Oh, what a big happy family! Ava with a gun, Carl with a gun, just as they would have wanted to be remembered. This is the good story.